Imagine a country so modern, so wealthy, so full of promise that the United States called it an island of stability. A country where women were doctors, lawyers, and members of parliament. A country with one of the most powerful armies in the region. Now imagine that within a single year, everything collapsed. A revolution nobody predicted swallowed that country whole. And what rose from its ashes reshaped the entire world and still does today. This is the story of Iran in the 20th century. From a crumbling empire, to oil wealth, to a king who played God, to a revolution no one could stop. In 1900, Iran was still called Persia, one of the oldest civilizations on earth, but its glory felt very far away. The Qajar kings who ruled it were more interested in European vacations and lavish spending than in actually governing. The country had no real army, no functioning roads, no central bank, and was perpetually broke. Two foreign empires had essentially carved Persia between them. Britain controlling the south, Russia controlling the north. The Qajar Shahs sold Iran's oil rights, fishing rights, even the right to print its own money, just to fund their lifestyles. But the Persian people weren't passive. In 1905, they forced their king to sign a constitution and create a parliament, Iran's first experiment with democracy. It was extraordinary. Merchants, clerics, and intellectuals united to drag their country toward the modern world. Then the king bombed his own parliament. Foreign powers intervened. World War I swept through Iranian territory, even though Iran never fought in it. Occupying armies seized Iran's grain, triggering a famine that killed over 1 million people. By 1921, the Qajar dynasty was barely functioning, a failed state. Something had to fill the vacuum. His name was Reza Khan, a soldier, the son of a minor military officer. In 1921, he marched 3,000 Cossack troops into Tehran, and the Qajar government simply crumbled before him. By 1925, he had crowned himself Reza Shah Pahlavi, founder of a new dynasty. What he built in the next 15 years was astonishing. 14,000 miles of roads, a national railway, Iran's first university, a modern army. He forced the country's powerful tribal leaders, who had operated as laws unto themselves for centuries, to submit to central authority. He did it brutally, but he did it. He renamed the country Iran, using its ancient pre-Islamic name, a deliberate signal that he was connecting the nation to its Persian roots, not its Islamic ones. He banned the veil for women, required men to wear Western-style hats, and sent young Iranians to study in Europe. But his modernization came with iron tyranny. No free press, no political parties, secret police. He had clerics beaten and intellectuals jailed. He seized private land for himself. He created a deep fault line in Iranian society between the westernized elite who benefited and the deeply religious majority who felt their identity was under attack. That fault line would never fully close. In 1941, the British and Soviets invaded Iran simultaneously. His modern army collapsed in 3 days. They forced Reza Shah to abdicate and exiled him to South Africa, where he died alone in 1944. His 22-year-old son, Mohammad Reza, was placed on the peacock throne. Now we get to the heart of it. The thing that explains almost everything that followed: oil. British geologists had struck oil in Iran in 1908, one of the largest deposits ever found. Britain took a controlling share of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Iran received just 16% of the profits from its own oil. Iranian workers at the world's largest refinery in Abadan were paid a fraction of what British workers earned, lived in segregated slums, and were banned from senior positions. In 1950, Britain earned more in taxes from the oil company than Iran received in total royalties. Enter Mohammad Mossadegh, an elderly, emotional, fearless statesman who had one electrifying idea: Iran's oil belongs to Iran. In 1951, elected as prime minister with overwhelming popular support, he nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. The world took notice. Time magazine named him Person of the Year. Iran was finally standing up. Britain was furious. They imposed a total oil embargo, blockaded Iranian exports, and went to the Americans with a new argument. Mossadegh is a communist. He'll hand Iran to the Soviets. It wasn't true. But in 1953, at the height of Cold War paranoia, it worked. The CIA and British intelligence launched Operation Ajax. They paid mob leaders, bribed military officers, hired provocateurs, and organized a coup. On the 19th of August, 1953, Mossadegh was arrested. He was sentenced to prison, then spent the rest of his life under house arrest until he died in 1967, never free again. The Shah was restored to full power. Iran's democracy was dead, and a deep, unhealing wound was carved into the Iranian national psyche, a mistrust of America that has never fully disappeared. After the coup, Mohammad Reza Shah was a different man, unchained, and with American backing, he was untouchable. He renegotiated oil agreements for better terms, and the money flowed. Tehran was transformed into a gleaming, cosmopolitan city. In 1963, he launched the White Revolution land reform that broke up the estates of feudal landlords and distributed land to millions of peasant families. Women won the right to vote. Literacy programs reached rural villages. The economy grew at nearly 10% annually through much of the 1960s. Per capita income multiplied tenfold in a generation. By the early 1970s, Iran had one of the fastest-growing economies on Earth. But beneath the prosperity savak, the Shah's secret police, built with CIA assistance, monitored phone calls, opened mail, recruited informants inside families. Torture was routine. Anyone who expressed political dissent risked arrest, disappearance, or worse. Iran had universities, but no intellectual freedom. A thriving middle class with no political voice. Modernity on the surface, and totalitarianism in its bones. Then came 1973. Arab members of OPEC imposed an oil embargo, and oil prices quadrupled. Iran pumped more and reaped a windfall. Revenues jumped from $4 billion to $20 billion in a single year. The Shah went on a spending spree unlike anything the region had seen. Fighter jets, warships, nuclear reactors, industrial projects all at once. The money came in faster than the country could absorb it. Inflation exploded. Millions of villagers flooded into Tehran and found a city alien to everything they knew. The Shah had accidentally built a pressure cooker and was turning up the heat. In 1977, American President Jimmy Carter pressed the Shah on human rights. Under that pressure, the Shah made his most catastrophic mistake. He slightly loosened the grip, released some political prisoners, eased censorship. He thought he could control the opening. He couldn't. Once you crack a pressure valve, you cannot control what escapes. In January 1978, a government newspaper published an article mocking the exiled Ayatollah Khomeini. Students in the holy city of Qom erupted. Police opened fire. People were killed. And in Shia tradition, the dead are mourned on the 40th day, which means another gathering, another potential clash, more deaths, another 40-day cycle. The Shah had accidentally set a revolutionary calendar in motion that he could not stop. By September 1978, Millions were marching across every major Iranian city, not just religious conservatives, but students, workers, leftists, feminists, merchants, united by one thing: the Shah must go. On September 8th, soldiers opened fire on a crowd in Tehran's Jaleh Square. Dozens were killed on what became known as Black Friday. The last bridge between the Shah and his people burned to ash. Through all of this, Ayatollah Khomeini, 79 years old, exiled in Paris, became a global media figure. He made careful, reassuring promises he would not personally rule. There would be democracy, freedom of press, rights for women. Many secular revolutionaries heard what they wanted to hear. On the 16th of January, 1979, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi walked across the tarmac of Tehran's airport, clutching a jar of Iranian soil, boarded a plane, and left forever. He died in exile in Egypt 18 months later. On February 1st, Khomeini's plane landed in Tehran. An estimated 5 million people lined the roads from the airport. A journalist asked him what he felt returning after 14 years. He said, "Nothing." Within days, the Shah's government collapsed. The revolution was complete. The Islamic Republic that followed executed hundreds of former officials, then turned on its own revolutionary allies. Secular leftists, feminists, and liberals who had fought side by side with Islamists to bring down the Shah were imprisoned, killed, or fled into exile. Women were required to veil. Universities were purged. The political freedoms promised during the revolution were dismantled one by one. In November 1979, Iranian students seized the U.S. Embassy and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days, beginning a cycle of American-Iranian conflict that has never ended. In 1980, Iraq invaded, starting an 8-year war that killed nearly 1 million people. But the story is not simply one of loss. For millions of Iranians, the revolution meant the end of foreign domination, of American CIA coups and British oil companies stripping their wealth. For the religious majority, it was a restoration of identity after decades of forced westernization that had dismissed their faith as backward. Iran's 20th century was shaped by one relentless question: who does this country belong to? Its king? Its clerics? Its foreign allies? Its people? In 1979, Iranians answered that question in the loudest way possible. Whether the answer delivered what they truly wanted is something Iranians are still debating today, loudly, and at great personal cost. What is undeniable: no country in the modern era had a story more dramatic, more tragic, or more consequential than Iran. And that story isn't over. If you're tired of shallow summaries and want the real forces that shaped our world, the power, the conflicts, the hidden decisions, then this channel is for you. Subscribe now and sharpen your understanding of history with every video.